In the state of Nevada, I am not crazy about or crazy against this new 474. Okay? The thing is, though, it allows for a little bit of variation in the way that it may be applied, especially at the level of the pharmacy. It's as if the pharmacies are the what I want to call the regulators or the gatekeepers over us as physicians on what we write. And there's some little things they enforce that are not part of the law.
So the practical effect is what? What in
The
a
practical
day-to-day
effect
basis, what happens?
is intimidation of the patients, fear of the patients losing their physicians, because more and more physicians are deciding not to write opiates for long-term pain management. In fact, there's a movement among physicians where some feel that there is no need for opiates in long-term chronic pain management at all.
Is that crazy?
Period. You know?
Is that legit?
That is not legit. And currently, according to the CDC guidelines, you have a few things that are caveats or exceptions, carve-outs. One, palliative care. Two, chronic pain associated with a malignancy. Three, if you're under hospice care. And four, if you're a sickle cell patient. Now, recently, and I'm not going to name the hospital, but a settlement was come with a patient who went in with sickle cell disease, which is not a malignancy. However, that patient was refused opiates. Instead, she was given high doses of NSAIDs, which is non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, IV, to such an extent that she ended up going into renal failure, multiple organ failure, and dying. The prescribed treatment is morphine, but for her sickle cell, she was given IV non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, and so her death was completely unnecessary.
Just give her the medicine, she'd be alive.
Right, but this anti-opiate has gotten to be to the extreme of sacrificing people's lives. Now, we're already sacrificing people's quality of life.
Tell me the stories that you hear from your patients and from your front office staff in dealing with pharmacies. What do they say?
Arrive at the pharmacy and they want to negotiate down their milligram doses to get to this 90 milligram arbitrary selected high dose, or in some instances 50 to 60 milligram morphine equivalents per day. Now, that's supposed to be based on the increased risk of an overdose with an opiate when you start going above 50 to 60 milligram morphine equivalents per day. Morphine milligram equivalents. Patients are like, what is that? Example, 1 milligram of oxycodone is equivalent to 1.5 milligrams of morphine. Or oxymorphone, which is Opana, is like 2 milligrams of morphine.
So pharmacists are imposing this limit that does not exist in the law?
And it's not part of the law.
It doesn't.
These are guidelines.
It's not even from CDC, or is it?
No, CDC gives us guidelines. They don't give us flat rules, because that would be like saying, for your diabetes, all you can take is 90 units of insulin per day. But suppose you need more.
What kind of, and you have patients that do need more?
Yes, I do. And this is also guidelines that were not specifically attached to chronic pain management.
What do you hear from your patients about how they're treated at pharmacies?
In many instances, they'll feel like they're being criminalized. They'll feel like they're being observed more intently than other patients who may be at the pharmacy. They don't know whether it's a race, sex, their diagnosis, or some other reason, but people feel intimidated.
They're being profiled.
Exactly. And so they feel uncomfortable at the pharmacy.
I've heard stories about privacy invasions where the pharmacists will just start spouting out, speaking
I've heard
openly.
that too. Yes. Yes.
The pharmacists sort of enjoy having power over doctors and telling you no?
I definitely think so. Now, I have good relationships with many pharmacists, but occasionally I'll run into a situation where it seems like the pharmacist is accusatory as to why am I writing this medicine? How have I tried anything else? How long has the patient been on this medicine? Have you gotten supportive x-rays? And I'm thinking, I've been at this 30 plus years. I'm not going to just write prescriptions willy-nilly.
You now have to provide all kinds of information that you didn't have to
Exactly.
before. Are pharmacists qualified to read x-rays, to look at MRIs?
No. As far as I know, that's not part of their training.
But they demand it anyway.
They demand it anyway. And ICD-10s, that's the International Code System, ICD, and currently we're on number 10, there may be an 11 later. But they'll ask for these codes, but not even know what they're for.
The pharmacy chains in particular have imposed that it seems like they don't want to sell them at all. They don't want to prescribe them at all.
That's the feeling I'm getting, that they don't want to deal with opiates at all. And so those patients are treated, they're like pariahs.
And insurance companies, same thing, they don't want to pay for it. They don't want to pay for it.
They don't want to pay for it. But what irritates me there, you can readily get approval, say for oxycodone, okay? Oxycodone, methadone are relatively cheap, so I can get approval for them just like that. But when I try to not raise the morphine milligram equivalents per day and try to write something, say like a buprenorphine product for pain, okay? I can't get it approved. Or when I get it approved, the copay is so high the patient can't afford it.
The doctor sees the patient and
Right.
makes a diagnosis, figure out what's going to work for this patient,
Precisely.
makes the prescription.
Right.
Pharmacy doesn't want to fill it, insurance company doesn't want to pay for it.
That's the feeling that you get.
What could the legislature do?
I think that, see, a lot of this, well, let me back up just a little bit. The enforcement of law on patients is the most stringent between federal or state. So, the federal level, we've got the guidelines. That's it, unless the doctor is doing something frankly illegal. But on the state level, then you have this enforcement thing and control from pharmacists who can create complaints on you as a physician, and that's where the emphasis and the pressure comes. And that's why I want to be there, you know, the doctor's day with the state, because they have the most direct and stringent effect on the day-to-day practice of a physician and the effect on the patient.
In the state of Alaska, the Board of Pharmacy, because it got complaints from lawmakers and patients and doctors, sent a letter out to pharmacists and pharmacy chains and said, look, the patient comes first.
Oh,
Patient-
really?
Yeah, patient comes first.
That's fantastic. That's what it's supposed to be. You know, the patient shouldn't have to feel criminalized.
One last question. It's the imaginary goal line that keeps moving. It seems like a lot of doctors in Nevada, even though the board is not as draconian as in some other states, you got to worry about the imaginary line that you cross over and the DEA comes knocking at the door.
Well, I worry less about the DEA than I do about the state board itself. Because with the DEA, I see the guidelines. If I stay inside of them, even if they come knocking at the door, then I can show them what they want to see. However, if a complaint happens and the board comes knocking at the door, they can actually take my license.
When we talked to
So
you,
that gives me a little bit more fear.
when we talked to you a year and a half or so ago, things were bad. Are they worse?
I think in some ways they're worse because now we have fewer physicians even willing to write opiates. So the pressure on me as a general family practitioner who does pain management is astronomically elevated, and the pressure on pain management specialists who do nothing but pain management is even more accelerated.
I would think that there would be a tendency to just, what the heck, it's too much
That's
trouble.
what's happening.
Just
That's
give
what's
up.
happening. They give up. And I mean, I have patients, and one of whom you're going to get to interview today, who was with a pain management specialist. That's what they do. They cut her medicine and dropped her.